that from here.
We good? Yes.
We're live.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the regular meeting of the Bethlehem Planning Commission. My name is Rob Malosky. I'm the chairman of the meeting. Other Planning Commission members include, to my immediate left, Mr. Matt Malozzi, Mr. Tom Marker, and Ms. Joy Cohen. We ask everyone to silence their cell phone at this time. We will proceed through today's agenda with the agenda items as listed. The applicant will have a chance to present their project to both the city staff and the Planning Commission. Planning Commission members will have an opportunity to direct questions related to the project to both the applicant and city staff. Following the Planning Commission discussion, interested parties will have an opportunity to comment on or ask questions related to the project. Anyone in attendance tonight that has a comment, we're asked that you sign your name, address, and email address on the sign-in sheet that is located at the podium prior to or at the end of your comments. Please adhere to a 5-minute time limit. We ask that all comments be related to the project proposal under review, and all comments be related to the land use issues. Where there are a significant number of interested parties, we request that members of the public be concise and avoid repeating previously made assertions. After all interested parties have had an opportunity to speak, Planning Commission members will have a final opportunity to deliberate on the project. The review of the Planning Commission is based on the provisions of the Salmo, zoning ordinances, and other ordinances. Decisions will be based upon these ordinances, recommendation of the city professional staff, pertinent public comment, and public good. Our first agenda item this evening is the approval of the October 10th, 2024 minutes. Any discussion on the minutes as written? I'll accept the motion at this time.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Planning Commission from October 10th.
Motion made, Ms. Cohen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Barker. Roll, please.
Mr. Malosky.
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
Minutes approved. Next agenda item, land development plan at 2650 Linden Street. Will the applicant please introduce yourself and you may begin.
Yes, good is this on?
Yep.
Good evening, planning members. I'm David Ronka, representing Makeda Partners, 2650 Linden LLC, and with me tonight is Blake Hops from Hoppes Engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Ronk. If you don't mind, or Mr. Hobbs, if you don't mind, please present and tell us a little
We're
more.
here this evening for the land development approval for planning approval for 2650 Linden. What I'm proposing to construct is an 2-story, 8-unit apartment building for which we had received zoning relief for 2 additional units, and I believe a setback variance. Blake, is that correct? Back in
August of 23.
August of 23, correct? Yes. So with that said, as you can see from the plan that's on the screen, we're proposing the front of the building will be north facing. South facing. The rear of the building will be north facing. I brought with me tonight some renderings of the both north and west elevation. West elevations. West will be facing Linden Street. With that, as you can see, we've got parking on the east side of the property. We have 16 spaces. Is that correctly?
60.
2 per unit, yes. And other than that, we've pretty much addressed most all of the initial planning comments. I believe we have outstanding the stormwater to resolve, and a few other minor cleanup items. Is that correct, Blake?
Mr. Rock, it is 2 stories, is that correct?
That is correct.
4 units per story?
That is correct.
If you don't mind, if we can see the.
Yes. I understand we don't have an easel tonight. Anyway, as I said, this is the south facing front elevation. And this will be the west facing Linden Street elevation. We've done our best to make the Linden Street side, look like an entrance, if you will, with our incorporating the mechanical room. As good as I can get it better on the screen.
Tell us a little bit about some of the materials that are used in the facade.
Stone veneer on the first floor levels on the south, east, and west elevations. We will also have standing seam metal roofs at the 2 front canopy entrances, as well as the west side mechanical room entrance. There'll be stone veneer on both entry towers. You can obviously see the 2 dormers. The second floor area will be Dutch lap, double 5 vinyl siding. So that's pretty much what the exterior is going to look like.
On the plan, can you just, if we can show an area where the is there an area for garbage recycling? That's usually.
Yes, that's on the.
Is that on there,
shows
Mr.
like on
Piper?
If you go back to the site plan, the waste receptacle is proposed
Right
on
there.
the, yes, exactly.
Okay.
On the north end of the parking lot. That will be enclosed in a fence. In addition to that, we are also providing a privacy fence around the east property line with returns on both the east-west heading property lines, if you will, or property lines. And I think it's an 16 or 18-foot return.
18.
18 feet returns. And I think it's a 6-foot high privacy fence is what we're proposing. And that was coordinated with the owners or the homeowners association of Turnberry.
Right.
And we also will be providing supplemental plantings at their request, which I believe is also in one of the comments. So we've worked with them in that respect as well. That was a request of theirs that we infill their current buffers. Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Ronka from any planning commission members?
Balconies?
There will be rear balconies, yes. Let's see, I believe we have a north facing elevation. We don't have it colored in, but that's a north facing elevation. Each unit will have a rear balcony, patio or balcony. The architectural plans may show that.
There it is.
Yeah, there you are.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes, the city letter mentions the location of the bicycle racks that appear to be on top of the sidewalk. Is that going to be
Yes.
relocated?
With respect to that, I may propose a shed in lieu of a bicycle rack at the location of the dumpsters. In fact, I did that on my Madison project. It's more convenient for the tenants.
So like a bike storage area.
Like storage area rather than
Right.
an exterior rack.
And that would be separate from the garbage area,
Exactly,
Mr. Rock.
exactly.
The garbage area would be fenced in,
Yes.
correct? And then that would be separate.
Yes, exactly. It they serve as one side of the waste screening area.
Understood. Understood.
That's what I did at Madison Avenue. I put a 10 by, we haven't finished it yet, but a 10 by 14 bike shed, we call it. So it's more convenient for the tenants rather than having to bring them in and out of the apartment building.
And that would be required to meet setbacks still?
Oh, yeah, that would meet, and it would, yes, it would be within the setback limits. We would configure it that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Malozzi, yes.
Mr. Ronka, probably the most significant outstanding comment on the letter is about stormwater.
Yes.
Can you talk, or your engineer speak to how that would be addressed, particularly like stormwater runoff to adjacent properties?
Yes. Blake, you want to comment on the underground, what we're proposing for the stormwater? And we did have it, so everyone's aware, we had a somewhat involved meeting with Basil Yamden to discuss the stormwater management. And we investigated a number of different things. The city had, or Basil had requested that we look into the possibility of somehow constructing a line down to the base. Blake, was it to the basin that currently exists?
Tie into their existing stormwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, inlet with piping that goes to their basin in the
And-
northeast corner.
yeah,
Turnberry
and-
Mews.
Oh, sorry about that. And anyway, with that said, that's not feasible. So what we are proposing is underground storage in the parking area
Okay,
to collect all the rainwater.
thank you.
Mr. Yandam is here tonight. Mr. Yandam, is there anything to add in reference to the stormwater?
Basil was tough on us.
Anything in reference to the stormwater management that you need to add to that? Thank you, Mr. Yandam.
Thank you. And then one other thing, if I might ask, Mr. Pfeiffer, if we could bring up the landscape plan, and just because of the agreement with Turnberry Mews, just if you could walk us through maybe in a little more detail with the landscaping and the agreement.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've proposed a, Blake, those arborvitaes.
Yes.
Arborvitae screening and additional infill along their existing plant screening on their east-west heading property line on the west side. I'm sorry, on the north side. South side of our property, north side of theirs. In fact, I think, yeah, that's what's shown there. Those additional infill plantings were requested by them.
Okay, great. And no issue with, there's an agreement in place and that'll be referenced on the.
We do not have the agreement in place, but do note that based on, they technically were required to provide those when Turnberry Mews was developed. They should have had the planning screenings in place under their original, because at that time, I think the ordinance requires when you're abutting a single family property,
Correct.
they should have provided them. And if you're not aware, there were a number of, the original developer of that project went bankrupt, I believe, or defaulted. So there were a number of improvements, I believe, that were never completed. So
We didn't escrow that?
yeah, that was yeah.
I was going to say, I appreciate and commend Mr. Ronka for providing that.
Yeah.
I would have thought that that's something that.
Yeah, in
I was
fact-
going to make that comment. Why aren't they doing it? Why-
Exactly.
why
It
should
was.
he?
It would have been part of their original development requirement to provide the.
Well, we really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something, Mr. Pfeiffer, Ms. Heller, that Mr. Ronka needs to continue dialogue with our forester, our landscape department here in the city to make sure we're handling that the right way? Is that?
Certainly. So the city forester has signed off on the land development plans. They have, I believe, even met with Mr. Ronka on site, or maybe just phone conversations to verify what kind of plant screenings would be appropriate for that location. And as the letter references, we're just waiting for a final agreement
Right.
to be submitted by Mr. Ronka.
And
to
you're
us.
fine with that, Mr. Rock?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer, Ms. Heller, is there anything else from the memo November 8th that the city wants to comment on? Any other comments?
Just a few, because basically between the dialogue here, you hit everything. There's still an outstanding issuance of a highway occupancy permit that we haven't yet received. The already mentioned agreement between the adjacent property owner for the landscaping. We commend the use of a bike shed. That is often something the EAC will reference in their letter. It's not very often that we get them, so we applaud that. We also applaud the developer for the elevations. They initially had this predominantly vinyl siding, and at our request and their response, they added the stone to 3 sides of the base of the building.
Right. Anything else on the letter? All fine. Mr. Rocky, hearing his comments and what you're fine with everything as.
Yes, in fact, for Craig, the HOP, we just received the cycle 3 comments back, which are just minor cleanup items. In fact, if you're not aware, PennDOT cooperated with us with getting we've already got the offsite utilities stubbed into the property. We pushed hard to get those done in advance of the Linden Street reconstruction project. So all of with the exception of the sidewalk, the curbing was completed and the water and sewer utilities were stubbed into the site. So we didn't have to go back and make another utility cut in Linden. PennDOT worked with us on that and allowed us actually to do the curbing without the HOP in place, but sanctioned it. We'll have those back, I would expect, within the next month.
Good. Any other comments or questions by any planning commission members for Mr. Ronco or the city staff? I will entertain a motion at this time. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Anyone here in attendance have any comments, questions for the land development plan at 2650 Linden Street? Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Chairman Malosky, I'll make a motion that we that approve the land development plan for 2650 Linden Street, contingent upon meeting all the conditions outlined in the November 8th, 2024 review letter from the city of Bethlehem.
Motion made, Mr. Malozzi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Barker. Roll, please.
Mr. Malosky.
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rocker. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your entry. And this is going to be a great project. And again, commend you for handling some of those things that should have been done prior to, and best of luck moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next agenda item is the land development plan at 1513 Maple Street. We'll allow the applicant a few minutes to get themselves prepared. Once you are ready, please introduce yourself and you may begin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Renko from Black Forest Engineering. I'm here with Mr. Villani, who is acting as the applicant or the project representative.
Thank you, Mr. Renko. Good to see you again. And
Likewise.
Talk to us a little bit about 1513 Maple.
So 1513 Maple is it's a 11,000 and change square foot lot with existing. It had a single family brick structure on it, a detached garage in the when I say the rear, I mean Parker Street. The applicant proposes to remove it or raise it, construct a 6-unit apartment dwelling. It's the high density RT district, so we meet the density requirements for a 6-unit. The parking requirement for 6 units is 1.5 spaces per unit. So we're required to have 9, and that's what we show on this site plan. In addition to that, we have a dumpster off of Parker Alley Street. We have bike rack, which I made a mistake on, and that bike rack is going to move more towards the front of the building. But obviously, our intent is to have a bike rack. We're well under our threshold for stormwater management because the property had almost 3,000 square feet of impervious. With the raising of the garage and the existing house, the difference is only around another 3,000 and change. So since we're not technically proposing to infiltrate stormwater, instead what we did is we actually have a curb. The site sort of flows from the south. Sheet flows across the site from the south to the east. Southeast to the north-ish. So what we did is we actually, the site's sort of graded at like a high point and like in the middle of the site. And there's a curb line that runs from Maple all the way. We're proposing a curb that runs from Maple to Parker, and the stormwater sort of splits. So it hits that, flows towards that curb, it splits, and that way the water gets out to the two paved street right-of-ways as opposed to flowing over the alley. That's another good talking point too. There's a private alley noted there along the northern property boundary. Right now it's technically, I believe it's an unopened or unimproved alley. However, it does appear that some of those properties, those twins, might actually use that for access to the rear of their properties. So it was brought up in the letter or it was suggested in the letter that if I think the applicant was interested in requesting to have that vacated and claim half of it, that would, I guess, be supported by the city. But at this time, with the sharing of that alley or unopened street and how it's actually shared between the other neighbors, we figured just best to leave it be.
Mr. Pfeiffer, is there any other comments as it relates to Mr. Renko's comments he made on general item number 3, the approximate 12-foot wide private alley being unopened? Anything to add to that?
The suggestion from staff was only in so much as being able to accommodate a bigger buffer yard in that area. But as you can see from the Google Maps view, it's pretty well buffered to begin with. And they're addressing the stormwater and addressing the issue of any headlights that would shine into the backyards of those adjacent properties.
You just run the mouse over that area so everyone can see kind of right there. Thank you. Continue, Mr. Renko. I'm sorry.
Just to be clear,
Council.
the way, if the street has been laid out and it's unopened for more than 21 years, what happens at that point is that the owners of the lots on either side of the street essentially take title to what would have been the center line of the paper street. And that happens automatically by operation of law. So there would no longer be a need to vacate the street at that point. A vacation is something that you can do within that 21-year period, where let's say the city would still have rights to open the street. So in this case, if the street has been laid out, I presume it has been laid out for more than 21 years and not open to the public, it would have at this point reverted. Now, there would still be private rights of easement, rights of access over that paper street to the public street that it sounds like some of these property owners may have. That's the state of things. It would not be possible at this point. Again, I presume that it's been unopened for at least 21 years. It would not be possible for the city to vacate it at this point.
Perhaps Mr. Villani might have a better insight on this. I apologize that I do not. I don't believe that was ever
Yeah.
intended to be a city street or
Correct.
alley.
Attorney Paul Herrick, when the owner of this property had me inquire about it, I contacted Paul Herrick of Holzinger, Herrick, and Scamilio. He pulled the deed on it and determined that it was a private alley owned by the home, I believe it's Beach Street, owned by the homes, the twin homes that Joe was referring to earlier. And what we noticed is the end home closer to Easton Avenue towards the alley, that homeowner's utilizing it. It's heavily vegetated, it's overgrown, and there's a fence there. That's why we did it. But I understand what you're saying about reverter clause, but it was a private street by that subdivision. That's what he told me.
Does it appear in any city plans or maps or anything like that? This,
It appears so it appears on the city block map. I contacted Peter in engineering when he first acquired the property, and Peter told me that it was not a city street. It was never a city street. It was a private street. I since then had contacted Paul Herrick, and he agreed to that.
okay. I don't want to get us off target. I'm
understand.
just, so if it's purely a private lane, I mean, any issues with rights of access are just private matters between the adjoining landowners, I would say. And so in that case, it would not be possible to vacate a purely private street in the first place.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Renko, continue. if you don't-
Okay, I to be honestly, I think that is pretty much my story for the day, for the evening. I'm happy to answer questions now.
Do you have any renderings of the, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. And what did we say, six units?
Yes.
6.
Yes.
And that's all brick, the front,
Yes.
all brick.
Yes.
Yes.
In our preliminary meeting with the staff, I met with Craig Pfeiffer, and he inquired about if we would consider utilizing a brick front just to blend into some of the brick homes
Sure.
that were there, and we would do that.
Any questions from the planning commission for Mr. Renko or Mr. Valani? Ms. Cohen?
Thank you. The Environmental Advisory Council submitted a letter. Could you talk about how you might be interested in adopting some of these suggestions regarding the environment?
Was there any specific,
Do we have an extra copy for Mr. Renko?
or were there any specific items that you wanted to discuss or talk about?
Well,
Oh,
one thing
sorry,
talks about working with the forester for native species plantings. You mentioned that you have the bicycle parking area. They did suggest solar panels. I assume you're making a energy efficient structure.
Yes. I'll respond.
Okay.
So we would be able to comply with a few of these things. Unfortunately, for 6 units, it's kind of unfeasible financially to do solar panels. However, we do all the buildings that we do an enhanced insulation package. That enhancement is called a super seal package. And the reason we do it, when we do single family homes, we're required to do blower door tests. And what that is a test that, as you may heard of, that it measures the escapability of heat from the house, how tight the house is. So we do the higher end super seal insulation package. We also do high efficiency heat pumps. The sustainable building materials, like I said, we're doing brick on the front. I think that's going to enhance it, not only aesthetically, but, fortify it structurally. We use 30-year shingles. Everything's up to the current code. And as far as the trees, we would not object to using whatever species that would be preferred. We're open to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valani. Any other questions or comments by the Planning Commission? Mr. Malozzi.
Mr. Ranko or Mr. Valani, in the general comments in the city's letter, the second one is a suggestion to consider masonry sills or lintels or other horizontal banding between floors. Is any of that under consideration? I realize the rendering may not be that level of detail.
Yes, it's just the not as detailed as I would like, but yes, all the sills would be masonry, soldier course, lentils like sills. We also consider putting bands on the property on the siding and make it as we break it up so it's aesthetically pleasing.
Soldier course sills.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
They would be masonry.
Thank you. And can we go to the lighting and landscape plan? I just like to look at that, particularly when we're in mature neighborhoods, high density, just to take a look and maybe talk about the screening from the neighboring properties. Sounds like you put some effort into that.
Actually, if we just circle back on since we're talking about landscaping as well, I do see now, and I apologize, Ms. Cohen, I see in this letter from the EAC that there was a statement that says the landscaping plan will be coordinated with the city forester. This is especially important since the changing climate could impact the optimum selection of native species. And I assume that's what you're referring to. But we also have the engineering review letter that essentially I think the landscape, I thought the city forester signed off on. So I don't know if that addresses this comment, but as far as I knew up until today, that I thought we were okay with our landscaping plan. But we're happy to comply if the forester were to think something else would be more suitable.
Well, it's mentioned in the city letter from the forester, but also, regarding the forester, but also the separate environmental advisory council specifically mentions native species as a way to help the environment.
Ms. Heller, Mr. Pfeiffer, that's usually something that the EAC and our forester obviously having dialogue, and there's some continuity there as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that we agree to comply with everything,
Yep.
and we actually do comply with what we agree that we're going to, do. And I
Absolutely.
believe that most of the landscaping which I think is pretty heavy, is native. But to address the next question is, we definitely have, there's a few existing trees on the property that there was no way to save them with the raising of the garage. With replanting and reestablishing those mature trees on the site, in addition to the street trees that we're going to propose on both Parker and Maple, there's 10 trees that we're actually going to plant on the site, full-size trees. And then we also have the typical foundation buffering around the bottom of the proposed structure or building. But then in addition to that, we have basically a really tight green screen around the entire property. Both, I guess, the north and the south property lines that are butted up against any of the residential dwellings that are in the neighborhood. So again, we always sort of try to keep the neighbors in mind when we're doing these designs. We know that they're sensitive sometimes about new development and construction, and we want things to look similar and fit in with the community. And like Mr. Villani showed you on the rendering, the brick was sort of a really close nod to the older brick structure that's out there now. And it doesn't look like an apartment building. If you look at the rendering, it looks more like it looks like it could be a single family colonial, a large one.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Renko. Anything else, Mr. Malone? Good. Mr. Pfeiffer, anything from the memo November 7th that needs to be mentioned? Pretty straightforward.
It's a clean letter, which is always refreshing. The only other comments I'd say to Mr. Villani's credit, he did put the brick facade on. He is working to put some details into that brick facade so that we have some ornamentation. And in previous times and discussions with him, we've talked about floor to floor heights and using hip roofs instead of gable ends to try and keep the massing of the structure within the neighborhood context. So again, something that he has done at our request.
And I will piggyback off of what Mr. Piper said. I would commend Mr. Velati for doing that. He has been in front of us in the past and is always cognizant and aware and conscientious of the environment, where his projects are, the neighborhood, the neighbors, and whatnot. So we appreciate that. Anyone here in attendance tonight have any questions, comments pertaining to the land development plan at 1513 Maple? Yes, if you don't mind, come on up, introduce yourself, and when you're finished, please sign in for the record. Thank you.
My name is Trish Theckman. I live on Woodlawn Avenue. So my first question will pertain to Parker Street, which is the alley in between Easton Avenue and Maple Street, which is where the parking spaces will be. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Very narrow alley. All the garages back into it from Easton Avenue. That's where they all park. They don't park out on Easton Avenue. They park back, and their cars they put also in front of their garages as well back there. Okay. It's not a wide alley. I mean, it's, to put all that traffic in there, there's already all the traffic from Easton Avenue. Now you've got all the traffic from this apartment complex that's going in. Little kids play in that alley. That's where the kids from Easton Avenue and Woodlawn and Hickory all meet and play, the young kids. It's a worry for all the residents. Has any of that been even looked at? Question? Anybody?
I'll answer questions. And if just for my records, your name was Trish and
Yes.
your last name is
Zeckman?
Zeckman. And what was your address at Woodlawn Ave?
421.
421.
So I'm the second house in from Maple Street.
No, I just wanted to make notes in case I have to follow up if you
Yeah.
information or something. I just want to make sure I have your address.
And
So
it's very Woodlawn Avenue is very parked up. Okay. So you have 1, 2, 3 sets of twins right there on the one side, which is backing into your property. Okay. And then across the street, there's 2 sets. So that street's very parked up to begin with. It's to try and see coming in and out of that alley is near impossible. I can't even imagine a garbage truck going back there, let alone,
yeah.
the additional cars. My second question would be, because we all know every household has 2 cars. So where are the other people parking that don't have, I've never seen a half a car. So
Nor have I yet.
figured I'd add a little humor tonight.
So I'll try to answer your questions as best as I could. So I do understand it is when you say a tight alley, it is a narrow street compared to say Maple.
Mhm.
I did park. I drove down there. I parked my vehicle in there when I did survey. There really isn't a shoulder. You have to. There's certainly not a shoulder in Park Ave. So the only folks who are using Parker Street are people who have an allocated parking spot in Parker Street. So there's several of the garages of the neighbors to the north.
Mhm.
These people park in their garage. They drive out on the Parker Street and leave. It's not really and I'm not trying to disarm any of the concerns you have. I'm just stating my point or my observation. It's not really a wide enough street that it's a cut through street where a lot of traffic is on it. Really, the only vehicles that in my opinion, that I would see using that street are people that would need to access either their garages or, in this case, a parking lot. We are required to provide off-street parking spaces so that, as you mentioned, Woodlawn is really tight. There's a deficit of parking. we
Well,
have
we
to,
have 2 boarding houses on our street.
okay, so we have to provide, or we don't have to, but the zoning ordinance says
Right, 1.5.
because of this deficit, and we know that there's parking needs, if you want to build 6 units, you have to make sure you provide at least 1.5 spaces per
Right.
unit. So it's
9.
so no one thinks there's going to be a half a car or a bicycle, but what the assumption is that with an apartment unit, there's going to be some people maybe, that are in college or young professionals that don't even have a car. So
Mhm.
the balance is that the way that I guess the law of averages is that some folks have 2 cars and some renters may not have any cars. So the city in their studies historically have determined that 1.5 cars in a high density district for apartments
Right.
is usually adequate.
Okay. I think what the city fails to realize here is Woodlawn Avenue and Maple Street are both cut-through streets. Okay, so at the corner of Woodlawn and Maple, where you're heading down towards this building, I mean, people barely even stop at the stop sign. It's the cut-through for people who are avoiding Easton Avenue. So they cut through to either go to Washington or they cut down Maple to get out to Easton Avenue. There's no handicap things at the curbs in that area, just so you can pass this on to the city. We have the old ones. We've never been addressed for the new ones. But the other thing I have a question about, could you show the picture again of the facade of that building? Okay, is that Maple Street there?
Yes.
Okay, so you said there were 2 paved streets where this runoff would affect from there. So what are the 2 paved streets?
So if you're looking at this photo, the way that the ground is sloped,
Yep.
it would be sloped to the right of this picture, traveling to the right.
Okay,
It hits that, so just adjacent to that private alley,
Mhm.
it would be on the right side of that photo. There's a proposed curb line that basically pushes the water to Parker Street, half of the lot to Parker Street, and half of this property out to Maple Street.
out to Maple. Okay, so on the, looking at the building, on the right side, there's 2 balconies there? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so I'm assuming there's 2 on the left side of that building as well,
yes.
which will be looking into my backyard and into my windows. So my question is, when you were talking about this, how you want to blend in with the neighborhood and everything, can you plant arborvitaes down the whole side of that property?
We have green,
I know you have green. I want something that's going to be up so they're not looking in my windows.
I mean, we could talk about planting something taller than what I have on this.
Okay, and I'm
plan.
sure
But-
Hickory Street people would like the same thing, I'm assuming, because you don't want anybody looking into your bathroom window while you're taking a shower. I know I don't. We'll all be waving to each other.
Understood. I mean, and that's always a concern. I mean, if we could switch back to the site plan really quick. Again, the city had put some thought into what realistically are minimum side yards and setbacks from property lines for that reason, where you don't feel like you're talking to your neighbor across
Right.
the window, like in the,
Right.
downtown city, Allentown. Nothing against Allentown. But here, if you look, we have an additional buffer beyond where our building restriction line is. So what the city, when the developers of the ordinance, what they thought was comfortable, we're probably twice the minimum required yard.
Mhm.
And then those units are also, that's the back of those units, and it looks like there's a pretty good rear yard, even on those. So I don't really think, again, I'm not trying to water your concerns, but I don't think this is going to be a situation where you have like a window and, you're sort of high-fiving people,
I'm not saying high-fiving.
yeah.
I'm saying they could look directly into my window. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Well, I think height-wise, I think that statement is true, but I think distance-wise, I think that would sort of be the case with anything. I think it would be no different than the brick building, the house that's there now.
So on the where Woodlawn Avenue side, backyard butts up to the side of the property, which would be the south side of the property. Okay. It slopes downhill.
Yeah, right now, again,
Slope.
even on this photo that we're looking at, everything's sloping towards the right.
Right.
Correct.
Is that slope still going to be there?
We can't change that. So there's a gentle, and then when I say slope, it seems flat, but
Yeah.
the
it's
way
not.
the way that the grade rolls is to the right.
I mow it, so
Okay.
it's not flat by
Oh.
any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. Well, again, that would just be something that we would just agree to disagree on. In the grand scheme of things, it's a flatter lot. This one is. Everything does flow to the right in that picture. So it's flowing away then from your properties.
So where do we stand on planning and arborvitae?
I think it's
There are some there already, which whoever the guys were that were taking stuff out of the house and said that those arborvitaes were staying, the ones that are already there.
So if the arborvitae's, I mean, we're not proposing anything along that property line other than more vegetation. So if the arborvitae that are out there, if you're satisfied with the arborvitae that are out there,
No, I want more. I want them behind my property line as well.
okay.
You know, I don't want to be looking at an apartment building. I really don't,
I understand.
you know.
Yep. No, well, we will.
I mean, I think that's a fair, assessment. I mean, considering we've never had an apartment building in our neighborhood. We're
Yeah.
all concerned about increased traffic, increased cars on the street, on Maple Street, because people are going to park on Maple Street.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe, possibly. but-
Right. The ones on Maple are all single family homes.
Let me, if I may.
Yes.
So just so we're on the same page, this is a by right use, number one.
Mhm.
Number two, we're providing the correct amount of off-street parking. Number three, this property yielded 9 units. The owner of this property is only doing 6 units, so he's not maximizing the property to its fullest extent. Number four, we're controlling any stormwater runoff that would be activated by this site. In fact, we're far below what the requirement is to manage it, but we're doing it anyway. So we will concede at this point, rather than beleaguer this thing, we'll put some arborvitae on that side to meet the other existing arborvitae that are there. So will that make you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want you to take this personally. This is
No,
nothing
no,
personal against.
we're not. But my point is, we didn't come here seeking any variances. Everything was by right. We're going to do a really nice job. We want the neighbors. We understand that it's, not desired here, but we're going to make it look nice, be neighborly, and, we'll accommodate you on that by connecting those arborvitae there to give you some privacy. Okay?
We would appreciate it.
Any other questions, Ms. Zeckman?
At this point, and you said no lights will be affecting the properties, like outside.
Any of the
lights.
proposed lighting is all shielded so that there's no
Okay.
spillage onto the other
Okay.
properties.
Okay, that's what we were concerned about. And I had to answer just as many questions when I was up here putting an above ground swimming pool in my backyard by the zoning board.
Well, I actually have one more question for you.
Okay,
Why do I get a sense from you that you feel it's undesirable to have an apartment building in the neighborhood? It's
because it's all houses, it's all, families living in that whole radius.
but you understand it's going to be young families that will be living in that apartment building as
Not
well.
necessarily. You don't know that for sure. How many bedrooms are they?
Well,
2-bedroom, 2-bath.
they're
Know that.
well, just like you just told me that there's families living in that neighborhood. I'm telling you, there's going to be families living in that apartment.
We'll see.
Okay.
Anything else, Mrs. Zeckman?
No, anybody else have any questions?
Anyone else here from the,
You're up next.
please give me your name and address for the record, please. You go to the podium, Mr. Sherry. Thank you.
All right. I live at 414 Hickory, which is right alongside Parker, the alley. So everything, all the water runoff you're talking about coming off this Omega's parking lot you're going to have there. I mean, up and down the alley, there's people going up and down that alley constantly. Garbage trucks in the morning, people going to work at ungodly hours, noisy cars, noisy people, radios, loud mufflers up and down the alley. I must be waking up 2-3 times a night. And you're talking about 6 and more parking up and down that alley. That's going to be ridiculous. My house is going to be like a combat zone. It's crazy, all this vehicles you're going to have up and down that alley. It's just nuts.
Well-
That alley, she said that alley is full of kids playing all the time. And now the kids are going to be playing. They're going to stop playing, run up the street, get back, and you're just going to interrupt everything.
I apologize on behalf of the applicant.
And the runoff, water running down the city paves roads, they bring them up. They don't take off the old stuff. They should keep raising it. So more water running down here is going to just run over the curbs and all over. It's scary. This is scary for me.
Any other questions, Mr. Sherry? Is there, other than your comments, is there any questions?
No, I can't think of any questions. Just, it's scary to me.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to mention, that alley behind my property and yours, I think the city did vacate that years ago. That's been vacated years ago by the city. They gave that to us. And there's a fence along your northern border. There's a fence there now.
There is a fence, correct? Yep.
So you don't have to bother with that at all. Just leave it be.
Okay. That is our plan.
Mr. Pfeiffer, if you don't mind, yes, a little bit higher. And that garage in the back is getting removed, correct?
Correct.
One would argue, and believe me, I understand your comments. I understand your concerns, some of which Mrs. Zeckman talked about. Certainly the city can make sure there's more of a police presence when it comes to speeding. That's something that all taxpayers deserve, right? So if that's something that's occurring, I would implore you to contact the police department and let them know about that. Children, obviously, another huge concern. If you see on the screen and the garage that's there, one would argue when that is removed and the parking lot is put in, that the sight lines for that area would improve, not based upon what is there now, a garage and kids going through there. And again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. If there is any time that there are concerns with traffic, speeding, this is why we have police. I would say, please contact and reach out for that. Along with, and that, just so you know, that's not our idea. I would also suggest, I think you mentioned, Ms. Zeckman, about the handicap cut-ins. If we can make note of that, and please pass that along as well. Okay.
Big pedestrian area because we have CVS down the street. We have multiple people.
Sure.
The dairy stores.
I'm very familiar with the area as I resided over that way off of Carlisle and Hilton Street. So I know it well. Yep. Any other comments, questions? Yes, ma'am. If you don't mind, come on up, give your name and address for the record.
My name's Lisa Rader. I have the corner property. My garage is right next to your property. One of the things I'm concerned with, and it's always an issue, snow removal. I know it sounds petty, but you cannot move up and down that street when it snows. Everybody's kind of like gridlocked. And putting extra vehicles on that street is going to be a really, really big hardship.
Which
Unless-
street is that?
On, well, yeah, it's Maple.
On Maple Street.
we all dig out on Woodlawn and my side on Maple, but it gets bottlenecked and you add some more vehicles to that. Where do you go with the snow? That's the hard thing. So, and how well, and this may not be any of my business, how well do they screen the residents in these complexes? Because we don't want riffraff in. And we don't just want, we have a lot of New Yorkers, New Jersey, a lot of these people coming in now, and they're not taking care of their places. I just spent a lot of money getting rid of bugs and mice, which the pest guy said might be coming from that house since you're tearing it apart, and it was a dirt floor in the basement. So I just spent a lot of money getting that taken care of. But any thoughts on that?
Yes.
I don't believe that that's something that the applicant needs to answer if it doesn't feel like it.
All right. It's just one of our concerns. We have a lot of people that live there a long time.
And I will add to that, Counselor, what we are here for is for the project that is not in our area. So if you have any other questions, as I stated in the opening comments I made, do you have anything else as it pertains to the land development
Just
plan?
mostly snow removal then.
Thank you.
But it is our concern because we've been there a long time.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Any other comments, Mr. Pfeiffer?
I have no more comments.
I will, before we discuss this any further, I'm just going to kind of repeat what I said earlier. I know anytime an infill project like this in a neighborhood is something that the neighbors are going to be concerned. And believe me, I appreciate all your comments and concerns. And some of those things, I think what you mentioned, you know, the speeding, the cut throughs, the things of that nature, continue to just try to be, continue to call and see if that area can get patrolled better from the police department. But, you know, the by right, this is a project by right. I believe Mr. Vellani and Mr. Pfeiffer, if I'm wrong, please tell me, he could have put 9 or 10 units in. We are doing 6. The parking, the stormwater, the memo from the letter is pretty straightforward. I'm commending the developer for the appearance of the apartment building, the brick alone, the cost that they're putting in for that. It is going to be a nice project that I would think would help improve some of the issues that you had mentioned over there. And anytime we can better our city that way, you know, all we ask is for everyone to kind of be patient and give it a chance. So if there's any other comments, questions by the Planning Commission, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Question.
Mr. Malozzi.
There was mentioned by the applicant a willingness to add arborvitae to, I'll call it the west property line, the Woodlawn Avenue side,
Yes.
to match existing.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vellani. Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Anyone else? Entertain a motion at this time.
Chairman Malosky, I'll make a motion to approve the land development plan for 1513 Maple Street, contingent upon meeting all of the conditions listed in the city's November 7th, 2024 review letter, with the addition, the applicant adding arborvitae to the west property line or Woodlawn Avenue side to match existing.
I'll second it. Roll, please.
Mr. Malosky.
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time and best of luck moving forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Heller, Mr. Pfeiffer, any general discussion items? Anything
just a few.
upcoming? Yes.
Sure, just a few comments on the summary as dated November 14th. There are two projects on the first page, Elliott Avenue and Pierce Street. Elliott Avenue will be coming before you in December, most likely as just the waiver for the grade of the street. Pierce Street, we've requested an extension from them. I don't believe they're going to be ready for the December 12th meeting, and Stephanie has already handled reaching out to the developer on that. Flipping over to the second page, the other project would be Lehigh Valley Health Network, Shanersville Road. That project will also need an extension. They will not be ready to be heard in November or December.
That's pretty big. Pretty big
That's a
project.
big project, yeah.
The Elliott Avenue, was that in front of us before?
That was,
Also-
as a sketch.
Yes, yes, all right. I remember,
And then it went to the zoning hearing board,
right.
and now they're
Got it,
back. It's
got
land
it.
development.
Good. Anything else, Mr. Pfeiffer?
And that's the one where we're working on, we're gonna do the sanitary sewer line easement on Craig Avenue.
Yes.
Okay, I was looking at that today. All right.
I have nothing else.
Any other concerns, Planning Commission?
Question?
Yes,
The last application, 1520 Hanover
last
Avenue.
page, Hanover Avenue?
So that's in both cities, Allentown and Bethlehem. Is that the old Bennett? auto
That's the
dealership?
state hospital site.
Okay, I thought
So there's about 11 acres of that site
In
that
the
are
back.
correct, that are in
Okay.
the city of Bethlehem. This subdivision really is the easiest subdivision we've ever worked on because all the subdivision is taking place in the city of Allentown, but for a section of a internal property line that's going to be extinguished. At some point, this developer will come back. They initially proposed some single-family dwellings on the portion within the city of Bethlehem. Obviously, they haven't submitted anything to us yet, but that was their intent.
Thank you.
Sure.
The Bennett Toyota dealership project is actually under current litigation.
Mhm.
I don't think it's gonna come back anytime soon.
Okay. There you go.
I'm good.
Anything else? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Malozzi. Thanks. Anyone else? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. See you next month.